Schedules your speakers. We've been doing this since January of 2017, and we've only missed, I think, Christmas and New Year's. That's the only thing that we've ever missed. So we're here every week. And even when we have a cancellation, then all of a sudden somebody else steps in. So I have a very fluid schedule. I don't like to schedule too far in advance, because when I get a phone call from somebody who says, "Can we come?" I said, "Oh yeah," you know. So it's really important that I keep the schedule very fluid. So today is National Voter Registration Day.
Yes, here.
That means we have 9 days to get voter registrations in. 9 days, because, 13 days. Because in 2 weeks, early voting starts. 2 weeks, 42 days, or 6 weeks until November 6th. We've got a lot of work to do in 42 days. I've been knocking on doors, and I've said to people before, I've been shocked at the number of people who are unregistered and the number of people who have been dropped. And these are AFL-CIO union people who are supposed to be out there and active. And I've just been really amazed at the number of people who have been dropped. And that's why the Ohio Equity Unity Coalition has been out there and really encouraging people to go to their app and check your voter registration. That's a big thing today. Everybody needs to check your voter registration, and everybody in your family, especially our senior citizens. Many of our senior citizens who have painstakingly requested an absentee ballot and voted absentee over the years are being dropped from the polls. Being dropped for the voter registration. So anybody out there, college students are being dropped. So you need to really check your voter registration. Are you ready, Alberta? Ready to turn this over? Next week we will hear first from the Speakers Bureau for the Children's Services Levy, and then we will hear from Pastor Leslie Jones, because she couldn't be here a couple weeks ago, and she's going to be coming with us now, as to the efforts in Cincinnati getting out all voters. Alberta Helmsley, here's your fearless leader.
Welcome to all of you today. I have a special presentation for you. I want you to find on your table the sample ballot that I have got. There's one for everybody. Please find the sample ballot. If you're not going to take it home, you can leave it, but I want everybody to have one when I'm talking about it. This is now available to every single person that I understand. It's available to every single person if you go to your Board of Elections and ask for your sample ballot. That's for your precinct. Everybody that you're going to vote for is on your sample ballot. This is the sample ballot that I am now giving out to everybody in my precinct. I'm a precinct executive. At this point now, I'm going out to my precinct and I'm handing one of these to everybody in my precinct. So everybody will have one of these so that they understand what it is. Does everybody understand what it is? Did you find everybody find a sample ballot, please. Find a sample ballot so you can see what it is. At the top it tells you that it's a sample ballot, and on the first half it tells you first the governors and then the people that are available for you to vote for in my precinct. Not your precinct, my precinct. Anybody here from Edgemont? Right, nobody's here from Edgemont. I'm here from Edgemont. Stanley, raise your hand. He's from Edgemont. He lives with me. So Stanley will get one. Let me tell you, Stanley will get one of these when he goes to the polls. So he will have with him the names of the people that we want to have on the ballot, and especially the judges, because the judges do not have Democrat or Republican on them. If you have one of these and you know who you're voting for, then it makes it easier for you to talk about the other people and who they should be voting for, and recommending that they get their tails in order and get on the computer and get their sample ballot ready for them. I didn't realize it was going to be available in September. I was told that it wouldn't be available until October, but I just happened to check and by gum, it was there. So, folks, this is what I'm handing out to everybody in my precinct, so everybody in my precinct will know exactly who they're voting for. So I think it's really important. I think you should know how to get in touch with your person. And if you have any trouble, go to Google and go to your county Board of Elections. It's not that hard to find. Your county Board of Elections, and then go to sample ballot. And well, first you have to tell you who you are and your address. And then you'll find out if you're registered to vote. And it's very good to go now and check to see if you're registered to vote, because if you voted absentee last time, they're cutting people off the rolls. Well, yes, we're finding more and more that people who have been voting absentee are getting cut from the rolls, even though they voted every single time. Yes?
I just wanted to add that if you did not get...
Microphone.
If you do not get an absentee ballot from you, staff, if the current Secretary of State, you do not get one, you either have not given them the proper address, you changed your address, or you're not registered. You're not registered.
Turn it on.
One or the other, so you better turn it on.
Jane, turn it on, hold it up.
The switch is on the side.
Horizontal.
Okay.
Horizontal. Touch it.
You gotta hold it like
Am
that.
I? Yes. Okay. Every person in the state of Ohio who is registered to vote, or they sent it to whatever address they have on hand for you, you may have changed your address, should have by this time received an application for an absentee ballot from the current Secretary of State. If you didn't get it, one of two things has happened. You were just not registered to vote. Somewhere along the line you got dropped, or what you thought you were, or whatever. Or two, you have changed your address and you have not let anybody know that. So you've got one or the other actions you have to take before October 9th, because that's absolutely your last day to register in this election.
October 9th. Because October 10th, you can go in with your sample ballot and go and vote. You can go and vote at the Board of Elections.
Or mail it in. Either one.
I'm recommending that you don't mail in an absentee ballot, that you actually go have somebody drive you, because too many people are losing their right to vote because they voted absentee.
Just one word
Not
of
pushing it
warning,
hard enough, so
and
go
people may argue with me on this, but I know as a matter of fact, going into my son's on Sunday, looking at his voter registration and find out who he's eligible to vote for. The FFL-CIO endorsed candidates is missing somebody, and so is the Hamilton County endorsed candidates slate. Senate, Ohio Senate District 8 is not on here. Sharonville has a portion of it that is in District 8, and that is Vanessa Enoch. And so therefore, it is imperative that everybody checks who they are voting for. Yes, ma'am?
That is Congressional District 8.
Congressional
not
District
Senate.
8. Well,
You said Senate District 8. She's running for Congress in the 8th Congressional District.
8th Congressional District,
it's
that's
Congress,
correct.
not
Congress,
Senate.
okay, thank you.
It makes a big difference.
Someday we'll get this all straight. We just gotta get the right people in the office, on the way to getting everything straight. Okay, other announcements today, besides today being the registration vote. Yes, Dr. Laura.
Good morning or good afternoon, depending upon what the time is right now. I am newly appointed to the Finance Committee of the Hamilton County Democratic Party. As such, I am tasked with going around and making sure that everybody is notified about the fall reception dinner. We have lost a $40,000 a year donor, and consequently that is our shortfall for the year that we have to make up. Typically, we would have this at the Westin Hotel. We're having it at the UAW hall in order to save a little bit of money. But we would like everybody, or as many people, to attend the fall reception as possible. Our guest speaker is Michael Avenatti, who is the attorney for Stormy Daniels, and also the only declared candidate for President of the United States in the Democratic Party. All right? Whether or not he's able to fulfill that promise is a question, and it is early, but he's the first one to declare. I would like to see everybody at the fall reception. There is a notice on your table, and thank you very much.
Okay, hello. I'm Tim Swallow with Cincinnati World Cinema, and I want to start off by saying thank you to all of you who came out in August to support Dark Money down at the Garfield Cinema. Really appreciate the turnout. I'm back today for the same topic that you've heard about already, and that's voting. And specifically, it's women voting. On the 13th and 14th of October at the Garfield Cinema on Race Street, we will show once again the remarkable film Iron-Jawed Angels. Your daughters, your granddaughters, your nieces, any woman that is ambulatory should come out and see this film. And this year we have a bonus. Dr. Catherine Durratt will be with us. Catherine, stand up. She's the charming lady with the sash. And she is doing a special presentation on suffragists in Cincinnati and the famous people who stopped here, as well as locals who made this an important place for the women's suffrage movement. So again, it's the 13th and 14th of October. It's the Garfield Cinema at Race and Garfield Place. I have some flyers and we'll get them to you. And thank you, Alberta, once again. Iron-Jawed Angels.
Iron-Jawed Angels.
Phenomenal.
Give the man a notice, he's our news person. Our newsletter person. Marilyn, where's our other microphone?
Right here.
Right here.
It's coming to you.
Right behind you.
Okay. Up.
Is it on? Okay. I'm Barbara Myers. I'm chair of the Cincinnati Women's Political Caucus. And I just wanted to remind you that a week from tonight, Women's Political Caucus and Cincinnati Now are going to have a discussion called Win or Lose, What Comes Next. And we're having Jamie Miracle, Deputy Director of NARAL, Ohio, and Lauren Blauvelt Copeland, who's Campaign Director for Planned Parenthood Advocates of Ohio. And they're going to talk about the lame duck session that is going to follow this election. And whether we win and get a lot of seats or not, there are a lot of bills that have already been put out that are going to be looked at during that lame duck session between the election and January, when new people take over, that are incredibly restrictive and very, very bad. So what we're going to do is learn about this legislation that's threatening to pass, and then figure out what we can do as advocates to fight back, because these are coming. It's October 2nd, 7 p.m. at the Ellen Hall Room, First Unitarian Church on Linton and Reading. And I know it was in the set of notices, but I just wanted to remind you, a week from tonight.
Okay, would you hand it? Good, thank you, thank you. Hand that to the man in back of you. Is that Tommy?
My name is Tommy Tim, and this week is the Over the Rhine International Film Festival, and this is the most unusual film festival in the country because it focuses on diversity, difference, and disabilities. There's some fabulous films there, and please use your schedule to pick them out. There's also the clips on the Over the Rhine Film Festival website, so check it out and come on down.
Okay, give one to Peter, make sure Peter gets one.
Here, I've got it.
Who's the next one for the microphone?
Right behind you.
Next for the microphone. Peter.
If there's anyone here, and I hope I see some new faces, who would like to get the newsletter regularly, please put your name and your email as clearly written as possible on one of these cards.
No card, no newsletter. We have a really good newsletter. You should try it out. Try it out. Peter, there's a lady too. Pass it down. Pass the microphone down.
I could find out, but the one who is in congressional district 8, that's
William Messer.
That's Vanessa.
He's going to give the mic. Who else has an
That's somebody else.
announcement?
Raise your hand if you have an announcement.
Raise your hand with announcements.
I'll try to find it.
All right.
Okay, I think we're there, folks. Here we go. And for today, whoops, wait a second, for Marilyn Zayas.
And an announcement.
Yeah, just real briefly. I have some lawn signs here for Judge Zayas, if anybody wants to take a lawn sign with them. There's also some information about her. Of course, I think everybody's probably aware that she's running for re-election to the 1st District Board of Appeals for a full 6-year term. She was elected 2 years ago to fill the last 2 years of a 6-year term. Hopefully we get her re-elected along with several of the other Democratic judges throughout the county. Thank you.
Other announcements? Okay, that brings us to our speaker for today. Garry is right here, and Brian is going to speak to us on homelessness in Cincinnati and the challenges that it faces for all of us in the city. Without further ado, Garry.
Hello, Democrats. So I'm officially a Greater Cincinnati Dem. Got my button. My work made me a button. So I'm just excited to be here to talk to you. I want to do a couple things while I'm here. And the main thing is to place homelessness on the Democratic platform.
Yes.
To make homelessness a Democratic issue. So I want the party to support ending homelessness. And secondly, I want you to support ending homelessness. Because we can do this. We could end homelessness in a moment if we wanted to. The amount of funding that we spend on other things like corporate welfare to solve the homelessness issue pales in comparison to the amount of funding that we give, the millions and millions and millions of dollars that we give. So somebody, how much does the city of Cincinnati give to homelessness each year? So back in June of this year, the city had a budget, as they do each year. And the city's budget is about $1.4 billion. 1.4 billion with a Z. And we always fight year after year as to how much money we're going to give to the human services budget. There's all these other things that we give to. We had just given $60 million to an extremely wealthy soccer franchise. We had just given them $60 million. And our council wants to argue about whether or not we should give about 0.75% of our budget to human services. That's what they want to do. This 0.75%, this is very important. This 0.75% of $1.4 billion, which, if we had it our way, it would be 1.5% of what's called the general fund, which is a small portion of our $1.4 billion of our whole budget. So we were asking for $6 million. They basically gave us $3 million. And then we divvy it out among some housing, some youth development, some job training, some homelessness efforts, violence reduction. No, there was no addiction prevention. From whom?
This year they're going to do that.
Well, it wasn't in this year's budget. So in the middle of our heroin epidemic, where 2 people die every day, they get put in the ground from overdose from heroin here. The Cat House, which is the only place you can get detoxed off of heroin within 120 miles a year, was not in the Human Services budget. And in fact, they didn't even receive a request for notification to apply for the funds. So the Cat House and myself and other people raised a fuss in the recovery community, and ultimately, after the budget, they said, okay, we'll give you $75,000. Now, I went through treatment. I'm an addict. I was a drug dealer, and I got a grand jury seal indictment for my arrest before I was 18 years old. I had a rough childhood.
There you go.
I grew up here, actually, in Bond Hill. We're technically in Paddock Hills, but I grew up a couple blocks from here in Bond Hill. And at any rate, we made a big fuss to get the Cat House some money. My treatment, I think, was like, I'm going to say, $25,000. So you can imagine, with 2 people dying every day of the heroin epidemic, and we give, our city's official response is to give $75,000 to the Cat House out of $1.4 billion budget in the middle of a heroin epidemic. I guess I'm harping on this, right? So, I will, I want to tell a little story. You're having trouble hearing me in the back?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, it sounds really loud up here. Maybe I'll get it away from the speaker. So, I'm saying for me, it's very loud.
Yeah, but the other speaker's there.
Check, 1. There's no speaker over here. Anyway, so there was a little boy walking down the beach. There had been a big storm, and a piles of starfish washed up on the shore. Piles of them. The little boy walking down the beach, bends down, picks up a starfish, throws it back in. Bends down, picks up a starfish, throws it back in. All this while, a very older gentleman is watching him. He says, "Sonny, what are you doing? You can't possibly make a difference. Look at all these thousands of starfish. They're everywhere." The boy picks up a starfish. The old man says, "Can you possibly make a difference?" The boy throws the starfish in, and he says, "For that one I did. For that one I did." See, when I told you I was a troubled kid and all that, there was one human being who saw my humanity. See, society had given up on me. I was locked up. I was in and out of probation officer. People didn't even try to help me anymore because they thought I was too far gone. But this one person looked in my soul and saw something in me that I certainly didn't see in myself. But he saw that I was worth saving. So he spent time with me. He spent hours and hours and hours, which is what it takes for somebody like me. I couldn't get help from the professionals. The professionals couldn't help me. This guy, he didn't get paid to help me. And so what I'm saying is, I owe a debt back. And that's why I started the Catholic Worker in 1991. That's why when they were tearing down affordable housing in downtown Cincinnati, which now, of course, there isn't any. But there was 115 units on Garfield. We mentioned Garfield. There was the Milner Hotel. And so I want to give homage to those who came before me, because I stand on the backs of giants. I stand on the shoulders of Reverend Morris McCracken. Give him a round of applause. He deserves it. I actually want to rename Lynn Street Reverend McCracken Way, and then we can be at the corner of Liberty and Reverend McCracken Way. I stand on the shoulders of Buddy Gray. So we were at Pyatt Park, at the Garfield Park there, and we wanted to protest and show how we were against them tearing down affordable housing, because this was a policy that goes way back, people. It goes back to Kenyon Bar. It goes back to, you know, the Trail of Tears of African Americans, and now the Trail of Tears of homelessness. But Reverend McCracken was trying to go over the fence. We were having a protest. He couldn't make it. The cops got to him. So I found myself leaping over the fence like a gazelle and forgot that my son was in daycare. So I had to, anyway, long and short was, I got someone to pick him up and I went to jail to try to stop Cincinnati from tearing down affordable housing. So why am I even talking about all this? I guess I just want to say this, ask you this. What is the cause of homelessness? Come on, shout it out. Say it. Wait. That first one, who said that? Wow, that was amazing. Greed.
Low wages.
Low wages. These are amazing answers.
Mental health issues. No affordable housing.
One at a time. Inability to self-govern.
No affordable housing.
No affordable housing.
Mental health issues.
Mental health issues.
Ignorance.
Wait a minute, one at a time.
Concentration of wealth.
Concentration of wealth.
Ignorance.
Ignorance.
Unemployment.
Unemployment.
Trump.
Trump.
Hardened hearts.
Hardened hearts. Thank you so much.
Transportation.
Transportation.
Unloving.
Unloving. Hate. Wow. See, I should have known. You guys would get all the answers right.
Don't want to get involved.
Don't want to get involved. Because I'm here speaking among friends. And you guys think like me. Rotten education system. Capitalism. Indifference. So,
For-profit prisons.
for-profit prisons. So much. Okay, now I'm going to ask you another question. Close your eyes for a second, please. And please answer this question honestly. Please close your eyes and please answer this question honestly. And please be honest, and even if it embarrasses you. There's a homeless person standing in front of you. What color are they and what gender are they?
White male.
White male.
Black female.
Black female.
Veteran.
Veteran. A veteran.
Child.
Child.
A child. Child.
Somebody gay. Basically looks like they're on drugs.
A person that looks like they're on drugs. Okay, yeah, let's go a little bit more about that person that you visualized in your brain a couple seconds ago. Could you tell me what they were wearing?
Cast off clothing.
Cast off clothing. Anyone else?
Shorts and a t-shirt.
Shorts and a t-shirt. Probably a beard if they're a white male.
Unwashed clothing.
Unwashed clothing.
Sombrero.
Berta is not homeless. Okay, go ahead, somebody. Okay, so I guess what I want to tell you, what a homeless person looks like is this. I've been homeless 5 times in my life. Little known fact, me and my mother were evicted quite a lot. You may not know what it feels like to have bailiffs carrying your stuff out, carrying your family heirlooms out, carrying your family pictures out, and you may or may not be able to get them. I slept at the drop-in center to get myself and my mother a voucher. I give them plasma. I lived in an abandoned building 6 months with no electricity, but only water. No heat, no light. When my son was born and I had a situation and I ended up homeless, my dad wasn't particularly eager to let me stay with him because, you know, most people who are homeless, obviously they don't have the family support that they need, right? Because they would stay with the family. Did I what? Did I steal? I've stolen plenty in my life. I've stolen plenty in my, not since I got sober 34 years ago, but sure I stole. I went to jail for stealing. Yeah. Sure. I was banned from Surrey Square, from the General GNC in Surrey Square. I was arrested by the Norwood cops. And then I want to talk just a little bit about the cost. What is the cost? What is the cost to end homelessness? How much does it cost?
Less than it costs to incarcerate.
Less than it costs to incarcerate.
Right.
Yeah. In fact, it costs less to end homelessness than it does to put them in a shelter. Shelters are more expensive than an apartment. And human warehouses are not the solution to homelessness. Shelters are not the solution to homelessness. I was with a young lady. Gosh, I forgot all about my little PowerPoint. Now I need a password to get in. But I was with the young lady. Her name is Jessica Barnett. You know, I'm going to tell you her story a little bit. And it may... I would love for you guys to meet these people. These people. The average homeless, how long is the average person homeless? How long? Anybody. There's no wrong answers. A couple months, 6 months, a year. It's 45 days. So what we view as let's see how we do this here. What we think of as, you know, forever homeless. I double clicked on it. Well, anyway, I'm not like necessarily some technical wizard up here. I don't know how to make that picture bigger. Let's see. Maybe one of you guys is expert here. Okay. Well, it's a little blurry, I guess. But so this is Jessica Barnett. Jessica Barnett has been homeless 3 years. She has 3 children. 7, 11, and 13. She was born and raised here. She was raised in Eastgate. She is on heroin. Are all homeless people on heroin? Obviously not. I never touched the stuff. I've never even seen it. Never even saw it. Jessica has been homeless 3 years and been in and out of jail. I met Jessica and I started working with her. And I took her and 5 other people to meet the mayor. And the mayor sat down with them. And the mayor has an aide, and her name is Jess Baker. And she's been working with me to try to help with some people. So, you know, at the same time, you know, maybe the city is chasing people around and saying the homeless camps are unacceptable. And we say homelessness is unacceptable. They have been helpful. She's certainly been helpful to to us through the Talbot House, trying to get her into permanent supportive housing, which is what we need, which is the solution to homelessness. It's called permanent supportive housing. It's the housing first model. Okay, if you get housing, I mean, just imagine being homeless, living out in the rain, in the snow, in the burning heat, sleeping on concrete, and trying to go to college, trying to study, and trying to get up maybe and go to work, or a variety of things to help yourself. So the housing first model, or to get clean and sober. The housing first model says housing first, then other stuff, then college, then a job, then clean and sober. But housing first. So fast forward, Jessica was with us all summer when we got moved from, she was original inhabitant under the tunnel, what we call the tunnel, which was under 3rd Street.
No, that's not.
Okay. Then we got moved from the bridge, under the bridge, to 3rd Street, out in the open, to another bridge over by US Bank, and we were complying with the orders of the courts and of deeders. So they said north of Central Parkway, so we went north of Central Parkway, just across the street from the Jack Casino. Then we went, they said outside of 71 and 75, we went in front of the Channel 9 Bank on Gilbert Avenue. So we were outside of 71, to the right of 71, to the east of 71. And then we ended up on private property. And then finally they said, you're not even allowed to be on private property. You cannot be homeless on private property. Okay. Yeah, what happened to the sanctuary city? So Jessica was with us the whole time, and I was working with her to get her into Talbot House. And, you know, this is like a long process, and you're dealing with people who have issues. You know, they got issues. But I guess, ultimately, you know, we're getting her, she is deciding to get clean and sober, and she wants to get on methadone. So we're going through the Talbot House. It takes hours and hours and meetings before you ever get a first dose of medicine from them. And so somebody else decided they wanted to work with her to try to get her housing. And they say, we're going to get you, here's your housing, Jessica. You got to go to the shelter. I've been working with Jessica. She's sobbing. She's hysterical. She's been homeless 3 years. She wants housing. She needs housing. They offer her a shelter. Go into a shelter. Go into a human warehouse. So, ultimately, hello, Mother. My mother, Patricia Garry.
Very nice.
They, at any rate, long and short, I guess, is that Jessica, you know, I fought like hell for Jessica to get housing. And it's like, people hate me because I'm fighting for her. I'm like, I don't care if you hate me. You're going to get her housing. She's going to get housing. She's going to get off the streets. It's going to make a difference for that one. And what I'm saying is it takes so much effort for one human being. And why does it take me yelling and screaming for one human being to get housing? So Over the Rhine Community Housing, they finally, not finally, but Over the Rhine, she is housed by Over the Rhine Community Housing. Those are her house keys in her hands. And of all the people, you know, that we've seen, that we've worked with, of all the people, you know, you saw the homeless camps, right? I mean, there's like a lot of homeless people in Cincinnati. In a year's time, there's 9,000 homeless people in Cincinnati. That just the camp on 3rd Street was 125 people. No, I don't think I want to do this one. Excuse me? Somebody said something? Oh. No. I clicked on the wrong thing. I was trying to show you something. I think this might come up. So, of all those 125 people, I don't know, how many do you think are housed now? Yeah, so of all those people, yeah. Yeah, that's not really good, but it's all right. I guess you can kind of see it, right? That's 3rd Street. I mean, that's what the homeless camp, one of the homeless camps looked like. I mean, you can't really probably see it very well from where you are, but it's pretty effing clean. I mean, these people were talking about human defecation and piles of needles and all this, rubbish that they were talking about. This street is probably cleaner than most of the streets in Cincinnati, because actually that's where they live, so they want to keep it clean. And this Hep A, they kept talking about Hep A. Did you hear that in the paper? Hep A, there wasn't a single case of Hep A, not one case. In fact, there was Hep A in one of Jeff Ruby's places, I think. The Syndicate. I don't think he still owns it anymore, but anyway. I'm going to probably just go ahead and shut up maybe and take some questions. But I guess I want to say this about that. I helped her. I'm not trying to take any credit. I'm just showing you what one individual, and that's just one individual. We got 5 individuals housing. I know that may not sound like much, but the hell that it takes to get one person into housing. And so what we need is to make this personal and to take some individual responsibility. But homelessness, the solution to homelessness, it's like, do you remember that Native American, that commercial, when I was a kid, it's a Native American riding a horse with a big feather hat, a chief, and he's got a tear running down his cheek, and he says something, and they say something like, only you can stop pollution, or you have to, clean up the environment. Does anybody remember this commercial? Yeah. Okay. So what that did was, it put all of the pollution, the polluters, they're off the hook, and it's all of our responsibility to deal with this. And I guess what I want to say is, I believe in hands-on helping people. That's what I do. That's the goal of my life. This is my life work. But way bigger than that, Brian from the AFL-CIO says this. He says, you're rescuing all these people who are falling off the waterfall, right? But how about we go to the top of the waterfall and stop the people from falling off in the first place? You can clap. So the idea is it personal or is it policy? I mean, a lot of homelessness has to do with policy. It's policy so people said addiction or mental health. Yes, there are poor people who are homeless who have mental health issues and addiction problems, right? But then there are rich people who have mental health issues and alcoholism and drug addiction who will never be homeless. So is it the alcoholism and drug addiction and mental health? Or is it something to do with the fact that they don't have enough money to pay for an apartment or a house or whatever? So we are now embarking on a tiny home village. And we want a sustainable tiny home village. And we want some land. And we want some money. And this could be an amazing thing where people have little cottage industries. And one guy that I know, he makes and sells jewelry. Another person does this. We could make we can have a little farm. We could have goats. We could sell goat cheese to restaurants. We could have specialty, vegetables, tiny eggplants, or whatever that we sell to restaurants. We have solar panels. We make it self-sustainable. People have to pay a small amount of rent, get some skin in the game, make it sustainable. And it could be beautiful. Because the relationships that were formed in these tunnels and underneath bridges, and they were bonds like you wouldn't believe. Like, you got your family. My friend, he gave a Thanksgiving prayer. He said, thank you, God, for bringing us together with our loved ones, and now let's go see our families. So you got your family that you choose, which may be closer to you than family you grew up with. Anyway, so there are a lot of ways we can end homelessness, primarily through policy, but secondly through us as individuals doing something for another human being. I've taken people into my own home, other people have taken people in their home, and it, you know, I'm not saying everybody has to do that, but there's something that we can all do. And maybe the biggest thing is elect people who are going to work to end homelessness. Because for whatever reason, whatever we're doing now ain't working. And all you got to do is walk around downtown, and there are more homeless people than business people walking around. What we're doing isn't working. It ain't working. Or there would be less and less. Got a question?
Yeah. Hi, Brian. First off, I'd like to thank you for all your community efforts. I just saw that you had donated a bus to the Better Bus Coalition, and I saw the report of why that's such a needed thing. As we heard someone back there say earlier, another big issue with homelessness is transportation, so I want to say thank you. My question is this. We saw a lot of coverage of homelessness downtown. Is that the only place we have homelessness in our city?
Thank you so much, Craig, for the softball question. But let me say this about that, because Craig alerted us to some homeless camps in Oakley. Any homeless in Oakley? Yeah, there are. Any homeless, and we also showed us some in Norwood. Anywhere you go, anybody from Mount Washington? Anybody from Mount Washington? You check out the Mount Washington sign. Yep. Right behind the Mount Washington sign, there's tents. Yep. Tents. It's getting worse. You know, they say frogs, you put them in some hot water or cool water and slowly turn it up, and they won't jump out and they'll boil to death. Like, it's getting warm in here. Michael.
Brian, I think Reverend Mack would be very proud of you for what you're doing. I want to thank you for stepping up and being the leader that we really need.
Amen.
Did you say that 9,000 homeless a year we have?
Over a course of a year, 9,000 people.
Okay.
We'll just say between 7 and 9.
So where are they now, since they keep breaking up the camps?
Right. They're everywhere. They're everywhere.
They're kind of scattered around different places.
So the police basically, literally, told me, we don't care if they're homeless, as long as we don't see them and they're not in big camps.
Okay.
So out of sight, out of mind. We don't care about solving homelessness, we just don't want to see homelessness. So there's so many cracks and crevices that people are in. I mean, they're under bushes, they're anywhere that they can be to try to get out of the elements.
Is anybody challenging Dieters? Is that legal, what he's doing?
I mean, to me, obviously, it doesn't seem legal to make it illegal to be homeless. There's a federal lawsuit. In fact, I meant to tell you, so Jessica, who was up here, she's the lead plaintiff in both the federal lawsuit as well as the state lawsuit. She's the lead plaintiff. So I'm very, very proud of her and what she's, been able to do, even as a homeless person. And I guess I'm going to play a couple little videos if they'll play, if they'll get big enough, and I don't know if the sound will work. But I'll take another phone call in the meantime.
Brian, may I?
Yes.
Brian and I are old friends.
Yes.
And Pat, his mom, I've known for a long time. Look, it is sad, I haven't figured up I don't know the exact figures, but the soccer stadium is going to cost us in the end about $60 million. That figure's thrown around, I'm not sure exactly what it costs. Has anybody figured out how much public housing could be built for that? That's one question. The second one, is there any plan, whatever, by our city government to construct any public housing?
I want to say at this time, no. Go ahead.
No, talk
Okay, at this time, we have no real policy plan for ending homelessness or creating affordable housing or supporting it as it needs to be. We're trying to put in place an affordable housing trust fund. There's various methods of funding. My mom has been doing this for 50 years and probably has a lot to say. She's the president of the Affordable Housing Advocates. I mean, you can basically do the math. Typically, you know, when you have an apartment building and you're building it, it's about 80,000 per door, they say, per door, or 80 to 100,000 per door. So you just divide that 60 million with that figure, and you could come up with the amount of housing that you could provide for that amount of money. Bill?
It's my understanding if it's government-sponsored housing is that they require that the people be sober. Is that accurate?
I guess yes and no. Yes and no. Yes and no. So in other words, so where Jessica is owned and operated by Over the Rhine Community Housing. Over the Rhine Community Housing is an exception to the rule, is what I'm saying. And in general, I mean, the CMHA, yes. I know a woman who was in CMHA, her son got caught smoking a joint in some other city, and she got evicted. Yeah, they have a zero tolerance policy with HUD. But here, it's permanent supportive housing, which is what we need. And she is I'm not saying anything she wouldn't say, but she's currently on heroin. So they're taking her in. She's in her apartment. They know it. But it's housing first. Jessica, here's your house. In maybe 2 or 3 days, we're going back to Talbert House, and she's getting her first dose of methadone, and she won't be on heroin anymore. Yeah, but I'm saying, but you are allowed to drink. I'm sorry, maybe it sounds horrible, but you're allowed to drink and drug in permanent, supportive, housing first model apartments. Because the idea is, we don't want you, going and maybe dying somewhere all alone where there's nobody around, but they have people on staff, in the building, monitoring people, keeping track, keeping them alive, in the meantime. I mean, it took me 8 years. I mean, it takes time. But people can change their lives, and they can become incredible people. But what they do need is this support.
I have heard on the news that some companies are foregoing the drug testing and employing people so that they at least can be employed so they can have an apartment. Is that true? I don't know if it's true in Cincinnati, is it?
I can't speak to that. I know of a guy right now who has a job. He was a victim of a crime, of a check fraud. Somebody had him cash a check. He cashed it. Anyway, they did a drug test on him. He called me this morning. He went down to his probation officer. They did a drug test. They put him in jail today. And he has a job. I mean, had a job. I know the guy. I mean, he works every day. Productive citizen. Sorry, back here.
Hi, Brian.
Hey, Marilyn.
You were talking about preventing homelessness.
Yes.
And I have the perfect example of how many people become homeless.
Yes.
In a neighborhood near mine, there's a woman who's the main support of 10 other people she took into her tiny cottage house.
Yeah.
She works 3 part-time jobs. She obviously doesn't have any higher education. The other people were homeless. She took them in, some family, some friends. So she had health problems. In the last 2 years, she's been hospitalized several times. So her taxes are now $2,000. Her house is paid off. This is 11 people at risk to be homeless. Mm-hmm. People who have a house. She's gone to the city. She can't get food stamps because she works. She can't get her taxes paid. She's going to be evicted. So if the city put in the proper assistance, this person and 11 other people could stay in their home and learn how to, the other people, get help with their mental problems. And so I just wanted to bring this up because this is what's lacking. It's very frustrating to keep hearing about almost neighbors who we can help.
There's a lot of common sense solutions like that, and thank you. Well, that's a big one. That's a big one. It takes the political will to end homelessness. We've criminalized them and called them dirty, and hunted them down. I mean, as crazy it sounds or extreme as it might sound, it's reminiscent of 1942 where they otherized other people.
The fundamental problem is the policy, the fact that it costs $90,000 per unit to build very modest affordable housing. That even if you build it without the former federal tax credits and that sort of thing, the rent that it takes to pay off the mortgage is not affordable by the people who are moving in. So what's the gap? It's an income gap that has to be filled. And we're not ready to talk about subsidizing income to that extent. But that's the fundamental policy, is that you can't, even if you build it, you can't sustain it because the people that are moving in can't afford the rent to manage it.
Correct, but with this tiny home concept that I'm talking about, they're only $10,000 per unit, and you can pay that off. Tiny homes can be built for as little as $10,000. That is not an exaggeration. $10,000. You could actually, there are places they built them for $3,000. So, yes. So they built 30 of them for $100,000.
You were talking about a compound of some type. Has there any discussion been made with our current governor cases or possibly the one in Forgery about sanctuary compounds? Or is that some kind of structural construct they would entertain? And the other question is the historic tourism district that's been mentioned for Southern Ohio. Would they include a homelessness program, and that you could criticize them for potentially squeezing out homeless population if they somehow draw a circle around Herod Beach or so, and the Grant and Mount Pleasant and the Freedom Center, and sort of do a do not permit like they do in the Washington district? Last question is there an international model like council housing that you could draw upon that maybe we could be the first in the country to use?
I like your suggestions. I mean, the main cause, I'll just say, the lack of affordable housing has been the tearing down of English Woods, Huntington Meadows, Lincoln Court, Laurel Homes, most of Over the Rhine affordable housing, the West End, Mount Auburn, Walnut Hills. I mean, we tear down 1,000 units of affordable housing every year. Somebody else.
You mentioned in your presentation earlier that we need some specific policies to fight homelessness. What are some of the specific policies that you would recommend we implement?
Well, first of all, we have to, put our money where our heart is. So if people want to make a difference, the political leaders have to want it first. I say, so after they want it, they could sponsor the tiny home village. They could sponsor a bunch of tiny home villages. But all the things that we first said when we said, what is the cause of homelessness? I'm going to ask this question because obviously we're wrapping up now. And I guess we won't have time to get into my videos, but if you ever want to see them, I'm happy to have you see them. So since I'm getting the hook here, let me just go ahead and say, what is the solution to homelessness? You tell me, anybody. What's the solution? What policies do we need?
Minimum wage, higher.
Well, I would throw out $15 minimum wage.
Yeah, this is about an alternative. When one of my visits to Cuba, I was very moved to go to an area where refugees from Central America, from U.S. death squads, many of them crippled in various ways, the Cuban government, very poor, gave them some land and gave them building supplies, minimal technical support, and used anyone in that group as labor to build houses and build a community. I suspect there's a lot of wasted human talent among the homeless. If there was again, it's what you're saying, if there was the will to actually find a solution, it could be done a lot cheaper.
No question. No question, exactly what he's saying. Two more and then I will just end it. Jane. Because I want to be mindful of that time. Well,
Can you hear me now? Okay. The answer, if we could throw out, probably 20, 25
Yeah.
solutions, and they're all interconnected, and it's all very complicated, and if you don't have the will to move forward and all those friends, then it's gonna all cave in on itself. But sometimes it's just as simple as abandoning an unreasonable rule. I know in some cases, some of the homeless people in Cincinnati, they have a dog. And if they could go to a shelter, except the shelter won't take pets. And so they don't, but they're prepared to deal with the other things related to going to a shelter, only they can't because they're not going to give up their family in that case, which is their beloved pet. So I think we have to be ever mindful. Sometimes it's the little things and then sometimes it's big stuff.
one more and we got to close it down, sorry. But I'll be here till 2 or whatever we want to stay here.
I just want to remind everybody that many of these are traumatized war victims.
Absolutely.
Our politicians have used, and when they come home, they kick them to the curb. And we have a veteran committing suicide every hour.
And I want to say that we can do this, people. We can end homelessness. We can do it together, especially if we make it a Democratic Party platform issue. Thank you.
So good, so good. I do want to mention just one small thing that I'm involved with. It's called the IHN. Have any of you heard of it? The Interfaith Hospitality Network. It takes just a few families, 3 or 4 families at a time, and they house them in various churches around the district, and then those churches are responsible for getting people in to take care of them. They have a program during the day where they get them job training, applications. There are a couple of people throwing those starfish back into the sea, and it just. I was really taken by this family that I was hosting when I was there a couple of weeks ago, where the family came in with 5 children, and they had 5 beds for the 5 children, and the children had not slept in beds for 6 months. It was just heart-rending to me that these kids, it was so exciting for these children to sleep in a bed, just a bed. And what happens is they take them through this program, they get them, and they are training them to go into housing. There's a whole process that's going on. But it's like the starfish on the sea. It's not dealing with the 9,000s. It's 4 or 5 families at a time. And there are some of us who do contribute in our own way, and I just want you to know that it happens. But it's just so, it's heart-rending. It is heart-rending. I want to thank you. You again have been a wonderful, wonderful audience. You are great questions. You're great people. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate you being here. Any other announcements?
Don't forget to go to the Democratic Party fall reception.
Right. The naturalization is kind of filled for this week. If you want to be in touch with me about that, that's fine. But it won't be happening until next month. I think that's it for now. Thank you for coming. You are a great, great audience. Thank you.